So I'm going to be talking about how to monitor your MIBI run in real time. Firstly, we're going to talk a little bit about the motivation behind why we do real-time monitoring. Then we'll take a look at the actual notebook and notice any places that you as the user would have to edit something. Then we'll discuss real-time versus post-run monitoring, take a look at the actual outputs that get produced by the notebook, and then lastly talk a little bit about troubleshooting. So why do we do real-time monitoring? Well, step 3 in the Toffee notebook is all about evaluating your MIBI run. And so we have 4 individual notebooks, each dedicated to assessing some part of the run. Taking the time to run each of these individual notebooks after you already waited for your run to complete can take a lot of processing time. And so what we wanted to do was kind of compress the functionality of these 4 notebooks into a single notebook, the 3A Monitor MIBI Run notebook, that can be open alongside your MIBI run and start doing some of these computations and processing as your data files are produced. So this is what the actual notebook looks like. And then down at the bottom, there are 2 variables that you're going to have to input that will be essential for the notebook. The first is the run name, and this is important that it exactly matches your run name because this is going to look for the folder that gets created in the data directory, and this is where these files are going to be produced from your run. So if it doesn't match accordingly, then the notebook's not going to be able to detect any data files being produced and then won't process any data. In addition, you're going to need the panel path. So you can download your panel file as a CSV from the IonPath MIBI tracker website, and then you should save it in the panel files directory. This is in the C drive, and it's one of those automatic directories that gets produced in the Setup Toffee notebook, which is the first notebook in the Toffee pipeline. So you can save your file there with an appropriate name indicative of your run. Then when you look at this panel path, that last section is just what you need to update with the name of your specific panel. Now, since the 3A notebook is the first time you're going to be using this panel, we run this load panel function. And what it's actually going to do is it's going to take your IonPath panel, which has a lot of unnecessary columns and information, and turn it into a panel that is appropriately formatted for the Toffee pipeline. It adds a few extra columns as well. So this load panel function will actually create a new panel file in this panel files directory that has the same name as before, but an appended -toffee so that it gets converted once, and then every other time you load in the panel down the pipeline, it'll just know that there was a Toffee panel produced in this directory, and then it'll read that one in. So once you've inputted your required variables, the rest of the notebook can just be run with the code as it is. There's a code cell first that, details all the callbacks that are executed. And these callbacks are just basically functions that run and start processing data as each file is created. And then there's a start watcher function. This cell will actually start the notebook and remain running as long as you still have remaining fobs in your run and there's no errors and no crashes. You can actually see that there are some print statements that get outputted at the bottom of the notebook. This discovered fob1 scan 1 beginning per fob callbacks. This is just for you to keep track of what's being done because, like I said, you can leave this running alongside your MIBI run. That's going to take a while. If you leave it overnight and come back to it, you'll be able to see there's print statements detailing what was going on and which fobs were detected and had computations run. So again, that big chunk of code that doesn't need to be edited still gives some useful information. So there's, again, these 4 callbacks that actually each directly correspond to a notebook. So each of these callbacks, the extract TIFF callback, plot QC metrics, plot MPH metrics, and image stitching, those are all directly corresponding to a individual notebook, the extract images notebook, and so on. So this is, again, part of taking that functionality of each notebook and just combining it into one notebook that will do all of these things as each fob file is produced. And these are important because you can go and look at each of these individual notebooks, look at the documentation there, understand why we're running these and what to be looking for when the outputted images and plots and files get produced. So if you want to look at any of these specific documentation for these, you can do that in the individual notebooks. The other reason it is so important to have these individual notebooks is because errors do happen. We are constantly updating and developing toffee still, and so some bumps in the road can occur. If something happens, you get this very scary red error message. That's okay. You can just run the individual notebooks. So say something goes wrong, you left your Watcher notebook running overnight and you come back in the morning and there was an error midway through. You can just run the individual notebooks 3B through 3E. You need to make sure you run them in order. And then those notebooks will process any missing data. And when I say process missing data, I really do mean any data and FOBs that were not already processed. So for example, when you run the extract bin images notebook, it will go to the extracted images directory, detect that, hey, 25 out of 28 FOBs were actually already extracted. It'll only extract the missing 3 that you don't have. So assuming that the monitoring notebook did most of the legwork, running these individual notebooks should not actually take much processing time. And it's essential that you do run each of these if something goes wrong, because there are certain callbacks that, for example, these run callbacks, the 3 at the top, those have functionality that doesn't actually get executed until the entire run, every single FOB is processed, and then some plots and files get produced. So if something goes wrong, even if you think, oh, I have all my QC metric files, it's still important that you run the notebook because, if everything's already there, it won't actually take any time. But if you're missing some plots or anything at the end, it will run these run callbacks, which is something you need. Okay, and so what's actually outputted by the monitoring MIBI run notebook? So in the C drive, you can go to the run metrics directory, another one of those automatic directories that should be on your computer. And there will be a run folder specific to your run that has been created. And when you open it, you will see the QC plots, which again, if you want to know what you're looking for, go ahead and look at the QC metrics notebook, and the median pulse height plot. On the D drive, however, the extracted images folder will hold your extracted images and your stitched images. So you can see in this directory that is specific to your run that there are individual FOB folders. If you open those, you'll see TIFF images for every channel. And then the stitched images directory holds one image for each TIFF that is a tiled image comprising of all the FOBs. So troubleshooting. So like I said, errors can happen, and we want to know anything that you deal with or you come across because it might not be something we already know about. So you can go ahead and submit an issue at github.com/AngelaLabs/Toffee. Go ahead and look through the open issues already. Someone might have already reported your specific bug, but if not, feel free to open an issue with us and we'll address it as soon as possible. With the monitoring notebook, it is helpful for us to understand what was going on during the run. So in the Watcher logs directory, this is another C drive directory, there will be a file with your run, and inside there is a run file that just lets us know which files are processed, which callbacks were called. And so if you could attach that to your issue, that would be really helpful for us to know what was going on in the run. So that's all you need to know about the monitoring notebook. And again, if you have any issues, go ahead and submit an issue with us and let us know.